now listening to the Zay Moore Podcast.
I want to know what Zay thinks
There's a
about
few
that.
things that we gotta address.
Black people got the swag. Black people set the trends. We are the culture. We got a reality star for our president. It's insane. Even if they try to erase black history out of schools, it's not going to erase black history. Because we've been here. Kendrick Lamar definitely beat Drake in that battle. Hands down. At the end of the day, I'm going to keep it real with my people. Because if we don't keep it real with each other, who will?
What's going on, everybody? You already know who it is. It's your boy Zay Moore, and I'm going to welcome you back to a brand new episode of the Zay Moore Podcast. Yeah. Today is October 13th, Monday. And as I promised, right, I have something special in store today. We are going to kick off the Ask Zay segment. I want to thank everybody who actually sent in questions. I got a few questions, very interesting questions, I'll say, that I'm sure will spark some great conversation today. But I'm glad that, you guys are participating, because that tells me that you're listening and, y'all went straight to the Zay Moore Podcast page and sent in some questions. So I thank you so much to everyone who sent in questions. All right. And today we're going to have some fun. We're going to talk about some shit. We're going to get down to the nitty gritty. So I hope y'all ready to have a good show. All right, sounds like y'all are ready. I'm ready too. I think it's going to be fun. Want to remind y'all, keep on sending the questions, right? Because the more questions we get, the more Ask Zay segments we can have. So don't forget that. But without further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump into this first question. All right, so the first question I got is, hey, Zay, my man is horny all the time. My homegirls and I have this conversation often about men with high sex drives being potentially gay or bisexual. Is there any truth to this? Wow. First off, shout out to you for asking that because, a lot of people do wonder about it. It's not a conversation that's far-fetched because I've heard it in other groups before. So I will say this, right? When it comes to sex drive, your sex drive is mainly driven by hormones, like testosterone, not sexual preference per se. So both heterosexual and bisexual men can have high or low sex drives. And as far as I know, and as far as I couldn't find, right, there is no scientific link between being bisexual and having a higher sex drive. Now, factors that affect or can influence a high sex drive is things like, again, hormones, stress, diet, sleep, emotional connection, frequency of sexual activity, and your lifestyle habits. Like, do you exercise a lot? I did come across studies that say, men who, or people in general who are more active in the gym, athletic, they tend to have higher sex drives, as well as substance use, right? So if you use drugs, and I'm talking about hard drugs, not a little leaf here and there, you feel me? I'm talking about like hard drugs. If you're, someone who tends to do that a lot, you tend to have a higher sex drive. So there's many things to consider when we're talking about, he has a high sex drive, right? However, I think it's dangerous to say, just because a guy has a high sex drive, he's gay or he's bisexual. I want to discuss or share with you guys, rather. I want to share with you an abstract from Richard A. Lipper. Richard A. Lipper is a well-known psychologist and an author. He did write a book called Gender, Nature, and Nurture that I recommend you guys check out. But he wrote something that I thought was relevant to this question. So Richard goes on to say, recent research suggests that for most women, high sex drive is associated with increased sexual attraction to both women and men. For men, however, high sex drive is associated with increased attraction to one sex or the other, but not to both, depending on men's sexual orientation. These findings were replicated in a very large BBC data set and were found to hold true in different nations, world regions, and age groups. Okay, so basically what Richard is saying, or what I'm getting, y'all, is that high sex drives in women tend to be linked to a attraction to both men and women, and men, high sex drives are linked to one or the other, depending on the man's sexual orientation. I agree with this argument, but I think there are a few other factors that we have to look at when we're discussing men, right? Because I believe men have more of a expectation when it comes to presentation to live up to, and that means the normal guy is just your everyday dude. He works, he might have a family, he might not have a family, normally has kids. You feel me? I see nowadays, like, girls who think dudes who are over 30 who don't have kids, they're gay, which is crazy to me. But yeah, there is more mentally that I feel like men have to endure when it comes to their sexual preferences, right? So while I agree with most of what Richard said, there are a few things that I think also do influence the high sex drive. One being hypersexuality being used as like a coping mechanism. Like, like people who are suppressing their sexuality can definitely be experiencing pent up sexual urges. And in most cases, this can actually cause hypersexuality, which is a condition, and where people are just engaging in mad sex to cope with these repressed feelings. There's also compulsive sexual behavior. According to the Mayo Clinic, they note that compulsive sexual behavior can be an unhealthy way to cope with issues like anxiety, depression, and stress, which are all commonly associated with concealing one's identity or sexual identity. For some, this might manifest as a high sex drive that feels out of control or is accompanied by feelings of guilt and shame. So I'll be the first to say, like when I was in high school, and that was really a time where I was in like between hiding who I was and not giving a fuck. Mainly because I was still at home, right? So I had a crazy ass mother. She definitely wasn't with the gay stuff, so I kept it kept it under wraps for a while. But when it comes to the suppression, yeah, like I'd say once I was able to get out of her house and do what I wanted, it turned into just me wanting to have sex all the time. Like I'm gonna keep it a buck, because when you're not getting the love and all that from home, you feel me, and you've had to kind of really put on the front just to be safe in a sense, right? Because again, like my mother was very abusive, so the first thing that pissed her off, she was throwing something or throwing hands. So just to keep the peace, you feel me, I just kind of started to be who she wanted me to be, you feel me. But when I got out in the streets, yeah, I was taking them down. And as I got older, you feel me, now I can say, okay, well, that I was definitely depressed. I was definitely looking for love in all the wrong places. I was looking for acceptance, you feel me. And when like you've been through any sort of like abuse or whatever, not just from like a partner, but a parent, a friend, whatever, any ounce of intimacy can be misconstrued as love and affection. So you want to be careful about that. But that all, just like we just read, you feel me, that all is a symptom of stress, anxiety, depression from just not being able to be who you want to be, right? Having to confide to what everybody else wants you to be. So to answer your question, no, I don't think that because a man is hypersexual, he's bisexual, or he's gay. However, when we are discussing, or if we look at it from an angle of the expectations of a man, right, and what's acceptable from a man, and the fact that there are bisexual men out there, there are gay men out there, whether open or not, yes, I will say there is a link to me psychologically between identity repression and hypersexuality. I do think that there is a link there, because again, that causes a lot of depression, anxiety, all that shit. And just a lot of times dudes who do like other dudes, they do it in private. You feel me? They're sneaking around on apps. they're lying, you feel me, to try to go get a piece, you feel me. So it's like that creates just a bunch of mental hoopla, you feel me. And then yeah, it's just, I feel like there's an obvious link. However, I don't think that we should label every hypersexual man bi or gay. I feel like that is when we go into dangerous territory. I don't feel like we should stereotype anyone, because again, it really differs based on the person that we're talking about. And unfortunately, I don't know your boyfriend to have more of a concrete opinion. So of course, all my opinions are, I'm gonna come at an angle of facts and findings and shit, and also personal experience. Because again, I've been in a situation where I've had to suppress my emotions, suppress who I am, and yeah, it did turn into things like depression and hypersexuality. Of course, you sometimes need to get a second opinion to know that, which is why I'm doing this. So I hope that somebody listening who might be going through this, or if this is you, that you connect with this message today. But all in all, I will say no. Let's not stereotype every hypersexual man. And if you are a man who is dealing with some sort of depression or anxiety because you are suppressing who you really are, I think that you should say fuck all the haters, you feel me. Look at yourself in the mirror and think about who really matters, you feel me. Because at the end of the day, you got to realize people die, people live, people die. And a lot of men will go to their grave with this secret. And it's one thing if you just don't want nobody to know, because hey, I feel like whatever floats your boat, if you want to keep that shit private, you have a right to keep that shit private. However, let's keep it a buck, right? 89% of men, whether it be black or white, the reason why they're not comfortable saying, hey, I'm bisexual, or hey, I'm gay, is because of what other people will think. You feel me? It's not on some like, oh yeah, I just could do what I want, and like, yeah, I'm gonna keep it private because I got that right. Nah, that's not what it is. 89, 90% of men who keep that private is because they want to fit in the world as a normal man, right? They want to be looked at as a normal man. So yeah, I think we need to come to a place where, we need to have a safe space for men to say, hey, this is who I am. You feel me? Because we complain about DL men, but then we judge men once they come out, or we have all of these negative things to say about gay men, so we can't ask for both, right? I feel like transparency is everything, though. So if you are a bisexual man and you're dating a woman, I feel like you should let her know, right? Especially with everything that's going on out here, and you want to stay safe, you want to keep her safe, you want to keep yourself safe. But yeah, man, all in all, we just need to come to a place where we accept everyone. Everyone has a safe space. That way we don't have to play guess who when it comes to people's sexuality, and people will feel more comfortable to be who they are. But thank you for that question. It incited a good topic. A good conversation. And yeah, I hope what we talked about helps somebody today listening. For real. All right, y'all. So next up, we have another question. This question is, how old is too old to dream? And I wanted to get to this one because out of all the questions I read through, it was the most transparent, the most humble. Like you read something and it kind of makes you have like a like an type of reaction. I was like, oh, that's a nice question to ask, right? How old is too old to dream? And I wanted to get to it because with the day-to-day duties of life, sometimes we forget to have a optimistic view, to dream, and I think it's important. So the short answer to this question is you're never too old, right? The only expiration that I see you could possibly have on a dream is one that you put on it yourself. The moment you wipe your hands and give up, that is the moment your dream has expired. So you want to keep that in mind. Also, there's some really big popular people who didn't get their breakouts until they were older. Look at Colonel Sanders, who started KFC. Didn't start until he was 65 years old. Vera Wang didn't design her first dress, y'all, until she was 40. 2 Chainz didn't break out into the music game until he was about 35, and Ava DuVernay directed her first feature at 32. Didn't really hit major fame until 40. And studies actually show that people who set goals later in life report higher life satisfaction and mental sharpness. Because you got to think about it, right? When you're in your teen years, when you're in your 20s, what you want, what you like changes. No matter how much, well, it depends, right, on like your surroundings. Because if you come from a family that is gung-ho on, family traditions, right? Or like if like your father was this and you have to be this, or if your mother was this and you have to be this, then a lot of times you unfortunately don't live the life you want to live. You live the life that your parents want you to live. But if you are someone who kind of has that freedom to try new things and just kind of see what works for you, then your goals will definitely change. I'll tell y'all, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a doctor, right? And that was like little me though. And then once I got older, like 6 years old, and I started singing and found out that I had a talent, then it was singing. And then when I hit about 12, I got into acting and writing, that I wanted to write books. And then as I got older, I realized, okay, well, you know what? I can do all these things. I just want to be a media guru, like a media mastermind. So I studied everything from music production to screenwriting to audio production to speaking, because I wanted to be well educated in every area of media. So it'll definitely change. And I say, yeah, man, dreams evolve. You're never too old. So to whoever sent that question, I hope that you have a dream that you really want to do, and after hearing this, you'll be like, you know what, I'm gonna go do it, because you're never too old. Maybe maybe you don't want what you wanted at 20, but you still got purpose in your tank. Your dreams can change lanes without you losing your drive. Never forget that. Your dreams can change lanes without losing your drive. And millennials, Gen Z, and even Gen X, we grew up in hustle culture, so success doesn't have a timestamp. As long as you're breathing, you can be blooming. That's what I say. As long as you're breathing, you can be blooming. So you ain't too old to dream. Trust me. You might be right on time. But all right, guys, that was all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed the first segment of Ask Zay. It was like a little preview. Yeah. More than likely, the show will be intertwined, or this segment rather will be intertwined into the Zay Moore Podcast show. So, I don't think that this is going to be its own thing. I think that this, we can go ahead and intertwine this, spend 10, 15 minutes answering questions from you guys, because I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you listening, and I appreciate you sending in the questions, because immediately once I sent out the call, I got them. So I appreciate all of my fans. I appreciate everybody in the countries outside of the U.S. as well who are sharing and spreading the Zay Moore love. So I want to thank y'all again for tuning in to the Zay Moore Podcast, checking out the Ask Zay segment. And I will see you guys tomorrow, right? We're going to be talking about some shit. But until then, peace.